You know, that agenda of fiscal responsibility reflects what has been an enormous expansion of government power and spending in the course of the last several decades. They did it on every excuse they could find. Now, some of them were pretty good excuses. There were the wars we had to fight and the things we had to do to defend the freedom of this country. But somebody in Washington and at various levels of the public sector discovered that this war thing was really a good deal. And they decided that they were going to make war on everything in sight. And we had the war on poverty and the war on crimes and the war on drugs and the war for this and the war for that. And you know, it's amazing how at the end of a lot of these wars, what we find is that the poverty's worse and the crime is worse and the drugs are worse than they have ever been, but we have less freedom than we had before. I think it's time we began to realize that sometimes this war on this and war on that has just been an excuse to make war on the pocketbooks and the decision-making authority of grassroots Americans. And we need to call it to a halt. We have reached the era where the people of this country, if they wish to save freedom and self-government, are going to have to stand up and with one voice reclaim the real and special purpose and mission of this people. And that special purpose and mission is not to put together the best government in the world. That's not the great genius of the American people, as our founders said. Our genius is not government, it is self-government. Our genius is not putting together programs and bureaucracies. Our genius is in allowing the people of this country, through their investments, their risk-taking, their will, their creativity, to shape the destiny of this nation. It's our job, not the government's job, to do that. When we did our taxpayer action days, the first taxpayer action day had as its slogan, a slogan I was just reminded of here. Our first slogan on taxpayer action day was, "Time for a clean sweep." And our second slogan was, "Take back your power." You know, I think those two things, they still ring pretty true to me. It's time that we stand up and of all the vestiges of those ideas that aggrandize government power and bureaucratic control, sweep this nation clean. It's time that we stand up and with one voice declare that we are going to do what we are supposed to do and take our power home. Not go to Washington and use it well, not go to Washington and use it to solve all the problems of the world. Because I'll tell you something. When a politician stands in front of you here and outlines his 12-point program to solve the problems of America from Washington, D.C., you know one thing, that they are not telling you the truth. Because there is not a single major problem this nation faces today that can be solved from Washington, D.C., and you and I both know it. There's only one reason. There's only one reason to go to Washington today, and that is the reason I think we, at a practical level, we got to keep foremost in our minds. You go to Washington to break up the power game. You go to Washington to bring those resources and take them home, back to the families, back to the businesses, back to the grassroots, community-based institutions where they belong, so that we can get on with the business of making this country what it's supposed to be. That is our challenge as a people. And in this generation, as in every generation of Americans, we got to decide. We've got to decide whether we're still fit to meet that challenge. Now, that's a tough decision. It's been put to us all the time. Down through the years in American history, you see at various points that critical question is put before us. Our founders made it clear that we were embarked on a mission to vindicate the capacity of mankind for self-government. Down through the years, all the philosophers and the writers and the people who thought they were so smart had said that ordinary folks could not govern a nation. They had to leave it to the few. They had to leave it to the rich. They had to leave it to the powerful. They had to leave it to the smart ones who knew it all. That ordinary folks didn't have the capacity to deal with their own affairs. They didn't have the virtue. For the last 200 years, we have been embarked on the business that our founders set us about, the business of proving them wrong, of proving that ordinary people are indeed capable of building up what has become the most extraordinary nation in the history of the earth. But you know, that extraordinary nation, I think sometimes we misunderstand it. I listen to folks talk about American politics these days, and they talk about the American dream. And I listen hard, and what I hear from them is that this is a dream of material prosperity, a dream of economic success. It's a dream about what kind of job you have and what kind of car you drive and all of that. And then, if you're not quite going to live in the house that you thought you were going to live in or have the car you thought you were going to have, then you're deprived of the American dream. I've really started to wonder about this because you know, I go back to the beginning, and it seems sort of strange. A lot of those people who came over to this country from old Europe, for instance, they actually left situations that were, in terms of material comfort and finances, better than the awful risks they found. They came to a wilderness, didn't even know they'd have enough to eat. And the people who broke open the western frontier went from developed cities in the east to areas of the west where all they had the opportunity to do was to work themselves to death against harsh climates, against uncertainties. I don't know that it makes sense for them to do that if what they were looking for was some easy road to prosperity. I read that American saga, and I don't see people who went in search of just material things. You know what I see? I see the people who wrote down in their charters that what they sought was an escape from an old world which dictated their conscience and established their merit based on who their parents were or what their ancestry was about. That's one of the reasons, by the way, I oppose this whole affirmative action business, because we're not supposed to be judged based on what our ancestors did or what they suffered. We're supposed to be judged as individuals based on what we do, based on what we are able to achieve, based on what we represent as individuals. And when you tell me that somebody's skin color or somebody's gender is going to determine their prospects in this world, that's turning the clock back way farther than just a few decades. It's turning the clock back hundreds of years to the time before this nation stood up and declared that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator, not by their ancestry, not by their skin color, not by their gender, not by the Congress, and not by the Constitution, and not by the laws. They are endowed by the almighty hand of the Creator God with their intrinsic worth that every human power must respect.